Okay, well, the next stage is also invincible. I'm probably not able to beat this one. But let's try sweeping. See if I can get this legendary again. Put in the team. That cleared. Let's go. Double legendary, baby. So that's possible.
Welcome to my channel, everyone. Really appreciate you tuning in. If you're new here, I hope you like the content. If you're returning, I'm so happy to have you come back. This channel is all about providing useful information related to Sword of Convallaria. So if that's what you're into, I'd be honored to have you join as a subscriber if you haven't already. So let's dive into the content. I have something special and fun prepared for today. Instead of going for like a hyper optimize or a build that just requires very specific units, I wanted to do something more interesting. So I built a Papal States team based around Suppression, which I'll get into a little bit later. But first, I wanted to bring up what I liked about this trial and encourage you to build your own team first. Because first of all, like the thing I like most about this fight compared to Trial 1 is like there's just so much flexibility in the team building. Like for my own clear, I used a very suboptimal team where I included Ballista rather than, Divine Grace. But that ended up being okay. And secondly, when I began preparing this guide after clearing this battle, I checked out a bunch of clears posted to YouTube by other creators. And there was just so much, variety. Like there was people who use like Butterfly, who I don't have. They use like KA Archer, Inanna as a secondary healer. Both great ideas. But one thing that I saw was like almost everybody used Beryl, just like the strategy for my team. And even though she's super good for this fight, she's definitely like probably best in slot. But I don't think she's actually required if you don't have her. So we'll talk about alternatives later. And lastly, chapters are included properly this time, so you can skip around easier and see all the stuff that you want to. So with that, let's go into the team building options. So here we are back in the strategy room with Beryl today, talking about team building. Just like in my last video, the first 5 units here are the ones I use for my clear: Angel, Beryl, Suppression, Ballista, and Abyss. Just quickly, Ballista would probably be the weakest performer and very suboptimal for this team comp. You definitely want a Divine Grace. The only reason I brought Ballista is because mine is 3-star rather than the 1-star Divine Grace, and I just didn't know how to use Divine Grace very well. Anyways, so this boss punishes melee strategies really hard. That means we have access to ranged or AoE damage. And so the 2-3 team structures that are available are magic damage, ranged damage, or a combination of both. Let's start by talking about Abyss and Suppression, who function as like the tanking backbone for the team. So first of all, Suppression is awesome, badass, crowd favorite, awesome design. And his kit is both unique and really well suited to tank this fight in particular, with his trait passive combined with his active skill, Devout Guard. So magic suppression reduces magical damage, obvious enough. It also does piercing damage to this boss whenever he gets hit by a single target attack. And if you were confused about how this interacts with Devout Guard, as I was, so it says here at the bottom, increases the trait effect to 200%. All this means is that this modifier for his trait gets doubled. So if he has, let's say, 1000 magic defense, like mine did during this fight after buffs, this trait will do 800 damage with the Devout Guard active instead of 400 damage. So for 80% piercing damage. And if you happen to upgrade his trait to 4-star or 5-star, that'll allow him to get 60% piercing damage, which doubles to 120% piercing damage with the Devout Guard active. And for his gears, you want him as bulky as possible. Throw on the Hermit Tarot and grab a fancy hat with, if you have it, any trinket you have that's upgraded to level 50. Hermit Tarot, you want like magic defense lines and HP. And, I use my Glorious Sphere for him. The 2 best ones would be the Silent Guard or the Pendant Halberd for the extra bulkiness that both provide. For his skills, I went the extra mile. I really liked both his rank 7 options. I mean, the Leader Aura is like what inspired me to build this kind of team comp. And then Flagellant is like probably one of my favorite passives in the game for energy generation, and as well as the damage reduction. For rank 5, the counterattack is interesting because it actually does work for this boss. Like, it doesn't, strike backs don't count as melee attacks for some reason. But of course, magical defense reaction is just much better, and I would choose that if I could go back. So if you don't take both options at rank 7, then yeah, you can just get the Resolve for his rank 1, though I think he performs much worse. So that's the Suppression. Next we'll talk about Abyss. So with Abyss, she was probably actually the second worst performer on my team. However, she's still really good, and I'm probably underselling how effective she was in providing output for my team. So what I'm talking about is like, she spends the entire fight just spamming her base skill, Erosion, for the very powerful level 2 debuffs, and she doesn't make use of the rest of her energy. And my problem with her in this fight, even though She's really good defensively. All of her offensive options, besides erosion, just don't work. The advanced immunity, you can't CC the boss, no sleeping it. 95% damage reduction from DOT skills. And so Dark Ripple also doesn't work to turn off its passives and reactions. So if you wanted to try to cheese the boss and turn off its melee protection, that doesn't work either. So all you're really left with is erosion and the production of darkness reaction, which enables her to be a tank. Like, you can actually just run her without suppression at all because of how powerful her reaction is in damage reduction. And I guess you could use Crumbled Order, the leader's aura, to build a completely different team comp based around the drifters, which there's actually pretty interesting options for that. Like, besides herself, there's 3 other mages: the Flame Sorceress, Dark Firelight Priest, and the Ice Priest. They all have interesting options for damage, for single target damage, and with good multipliers. And then there's also the 2 Outlaw Archer brothers, as I call them, if you want to go the physical route. And they benefit from all the debuffs that Abyss does with an extra synergy. So that's Abyss, and like with her equips, if she's not the tank, run her with Fortune. You want that like RNG bonus healing, especially, or use the Hermit Tarot if she's your primary tank. For her weapon, I still don't have very many staffs, so I had to use the Gazing Orb on my actual carry for Beryl. And like, so my Explosive Crystal, even though it's 5-star, it basically has no gear skill because she's not using any AoE damage options. And for the trinket here, it doesn't really matter what you have. You want her to be very tanky if she's your tank, but I just want to do a side quest about the Flying Blade Arm Guards while I'm here. For any player that's lucky enough to get multiple Flying Blade Arm Guards, I highly recommend you not combine them, because there's probably going to be situations where you have multiple units in your team comp that want to use this to activate the rest of their kits, like Sophia. So keep that in mind. And so that basically covers Abyss. By the way, a quick shout out to a fellow content creator, a Magic Joe. She has clear videos like this, and she was the one who showcased that Abyss can function as a primary tank without having to bring suppression at all. So I thought that's a really great idea. I'll link to her channel in the description. Next up, we have Angel, everyone's favorite healer. So I won't go over her in too much detail like I did in my other videos, but why she's so good, besides her AoE heal, is because this boss applies a DOT, damage over time skill, and we need to cleanse those stacks constantly, like every round. And so her Light of Healing AoE skill cleanses 1 debuff stack naturally, but we need to cleanse multiple stacks because the boss applies multiple stacks. So we also need to equip her with the Empress Tarot. This allows her to cleanse multiple stacks for the allies that are in her heal AoE. And next I'll pull up this staff, or a healer weapon, the Reorganized Cube. If you happen to have one of those, definitely equip it so that you can cleanse 3 stacks at the same time. So here I am in the Memory Crystal shop. If you wanted to know how to find access to the descriptions for all the equipment for the weapons as well as the trinkets, so just click on the unnamed legendary weapon crystal you see here in the middle. Click view, you see all the weapons. And for the Reorganized Cube, it has a very similar effect to the Empress Tarot. I think it's the same. When using a skill on an ally, additionally dispel 1 debuff. This actually goes really well with Mytha, by the way. And so, unfortunately, with these weapons, these equipments, like, they don't apply that effect for Angel when she's healing herself, even if she's in the AoE. It only applies to allies that are in that heal range or whatever skill that's being casted. So it's very important to be mindful of Angel's positioning and not have her in a stigmatic tile as often as possible, because she's unable to really clean the debuffs for herself as well as she is for her allies. So that covers Angel, the basics for this fight. So last, let's go over the DPS options. I'll cover Beryl and skip over Ballista, because Ballista is certainly not optimal for this kind of team comp, unless you're building out a full Archer comp with Divine Grace, Ballista, KA Archer, etc. And I'll also go over other alternative options if you don't happen to have a Beryl. So starting with Beryl, first things first, for her Tarot slot, do not equip her with the Dream of the Magician, because this actually doesn't increase her single target damage. Like, it's very, very tricky here, and I wasn't aware of this until the creator Dream, shout out to him, he did a video on this. It just doesn't work for single target damage, even though the descriptions might imply that. And so you want to equip her instead with the Sun Tarot or a Fortune, which both are pretty good. And you'll see here, like with my wand, I have the single target damage wand, the Gazing Orb, the Epic. I still don't have a good wand, sadly. And interestingly enough, like for the stage 8 fight, the level 55, I only had this upgrade to level 20 and was able to clear it at 3-star. And then on my first or second try for the stage 9, I was unable to beat it the first time because I was using a really scuffed wand. So after upgrading to level 40, I was able to clear it. And so that just goes to show, like, this particular weapon trial is not as much of a gear and stat check compared to the weapon trial 3, which I covered previously. And for her skills, of course, you want to take her single target innate skill, Energy Restoration, And then you want to try this, her supportive heal with energy restoration, over any of her fire skills, because her fire skills just, you don't have time to use them. They're not optimal, and the boss just has a big advanced immunity DOT reduction. So I didn't want to spend the Castelia at this point for try this, but it definitely will be useful, especially if you're using like only one healer. Also, a quick mention about her reaction skill QD. You probably took it, but this skill makes her really particularly tanky for this fight, which takes a lot of pressure off your team, your healer and your other DPS, because she's able to tank the boss mechanics, which is like required because your tank isn't able to handle all the mechanics on its own. But with Beryl's help, with this reaction, she's the one that's going to be taking like one of those AoE attacks, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Finally, let's cover the DPS options, alternative ones. So if you don't have Beryl, I would actually recommend Papal Ice Priest as the top choice. He'll be spamming Ice Lance as a 130% modifier nuke every round, and he'd also bring, ideally, his rank 3 field. So you're probably aware of how awesome this unit is for the tower, and you probably took Icy Blast because it's his best skill. But field is optimal for this particular fight. It's even a stronger version of Angel's Magic Defense aura because it's wider and has a bigger reduction value. And so Ice Priest would be my choice for Beryl replacement, but he would also work well with Beryl because Ice Lance, it debuffs the boss's speed by 50, which allows her to act before the boss, which is great. And besides that, Divine Grace, probably the best archer for this fight, for epic archers, especially if you're bringing a suppression team. And the Outlaw Archers, shout out to them, as well as KA Archer over here. These are really fun units, like some of the best bronze units. And KA Archer, no one really talks about her, but she is really solid long-range archer, super high crit rate from her trait and her Larana passive. And she has a lot of, like a 4-cell range, great unit. So if you want to, use like low tier rarity or low rarity units, these are some of your options. And quick mention about Inanna. If you want to run 2 healers with Angel and Inanna, it actually works. Take off her guard skill and bring the, the soulmate. Add a lot of tankiness to your team, her heal and her princess prayer. And the first guard that she automatically summons, it can be used to tank one of the AoE mechanics, which we'll get into this next section. So let's just go there. So now that you've chosen your team that you want to bring, probably based on the weapons that you've upgraded and the game has given you. Like if you have a lot of bows, you can go all physical. If the game gives you a lot of staffs, you can bring more magic users. And so let's go into the replay to cover the mechanics, as well as just go through it, watching the replay itself. And before I start explaining, okay, this is so fast, she wants to get started right away. The tactics I bring for this fight, the most important one is the flag of Convallaria, and then urgent orders as well. March commands is the one for the intermediate slot, and that's also very good. I think most clears I see use the marching commands as like on turn 1 to start moving everybody into position. I have a little bit of a slower strat where I want to use my flag of Convallaria turn 2, and I want to put it on this spot where this annoying rock is, this thin stone square. So I'm going to be spending my first turn just breaking this rock, so on turn 2 I can put the flag there, so it has enough range to apply everywhere I want, and it's out of the range of the boss AoE. So speaking of the boss AoE, let's talk about his mechanics. Of course, his trait and his reaction, these are what say no to melee attacks. And so we can pretty much ignore those two. Just like, okay, we can't take melee users. Just learn about the Stigmata debuff and review his advanced immunity. And so he starts the fight with Dust to Dust, his basic attack, which does quite a lot of damage. Even my Suppression on round 1 is not able to take the basic attack of the boss without activating Devout Guard right away. So you'll see me move my my Suppression up here, and usually I would want to actually start whacking away at this rock, but I have to use Devout Guard first, otherwise he just doesn't survive the nuke. After that, on turn 2, he begins channeling to cast his biggest AoE, like the 3x6. And so this is a safe round for round 2, and you just start moving your units out of the way while doing DPS. He follows that up after that round. On round 3, he does this attack with the big AoE, and then he also applies his passive, which every round he changes 3 tiles under your characters into Stigmata tiles. And so round 3 is kind of complicated because he does all 3 mechanics at once, where he casts his big nuke. You probably already dodged it after moving all your characters out of the way. Then he also applies his secondary AoE, where he starts another channel. He targets one of your units in particular, the lowest HP unit, and he puts a marker on them where there's this square around them, and you want to bring 2 other, instead of avoiding it and having that one character just tank the blast itself with a heal, you want to actually bring in 2 other units to reduce the damage of the AoE, so it doesn't just kill the unit outright. And so that's the cycle. It'll go after that. the following round, it will use basic attack again, start the channel again, for the first channel, then activate the skill and start abysmal the second channel, and also the round after it starts with basic attack. So it's like 1, 2, 3. That's the cycle. And every round is also just changing a lot of tiles into stigmata tiles. So that's why nobody's going to have like the exact same clear because of how much RNG is involved in this particular fight with the stigmata. And like, you get an unlucky circumstances where like maybe he's just targeting one particular unit, like he's like just spamming the stigmata tiles on your abyss, and you're just like unable to position her. You can use the backtrack feature, so like he'll target different units if you backtrack. So that's the boss. Let's go into the replay, see how I do this. So you see me walking up forward, like I said, 3k damage. That's gonna be lower later on. And yeah, I even like spend skills to like break this rock. That's how much I wanted to get down. I'm already starting to dispel off the stigmata tiles. And Abyss is just debuffing the boss. There's the flag. This is round 2. You cast the AoE prep. And this spot is where you want your DPS to attack from, those 2 corners. I'm moving everyone out of the way that's slower. Debuff again. That attack on the rock doesn't matter because we don't destroy that rock. So he casts the damage portion, and now you'll see here, he uses aiming marker to apply his second skill, Abyssal Gaze, right? And he cast it on my Abyss, who happens to be lowest HP at this moment. And you'll see my movement here. Oh, the camera's like auto-adjusting. You want to move around, avoiding those stigmata tiles, but you also want to like think about like where you want to place the stigmata tiles, so that you can space your characters a lot better, like round by round. And like you think about like, okay, where do I want to move my Abyss next round? You probably want to move her like around, I don't even know where I take her. I think probably here, so that Angel will come here, and then Abyss will move here, so the Angel and the Ballista in this case will be taking the AoE. And then you're like gonna swap back and forth. Like in the beginning, I was over on this left side of the map near the flag, and then now I'm gonna move down and occupy the right side of the map, so that like those tiles will be cleansed. Oh, okay, so I use Beryl to tank, of course. Yeah, like my Ballista is very squishy. The squishiest in this team. Like I said, moving everything to the right, clearing off stigmata debuffs. And fortunately, Suppression's a beast, and he could just clear off his own debuffs. So this is a very technical, very like methodical fight. You want to like be very thoughtful with your unit placements. Cast the aiming marker again. Oh, one thing to note too. Like you don't want your tank, I mentioned this earlier, you don't want your tank to be the one who takes the aiming marker, because unfortunately like there's no unit that I'm aware of that can take the aiming marker nuke and then follow it up on the same turn with his basic attack, because that's how it works. Like the round after he casts this aiming marker, he does the nuke and then he also does a basic attack in the same round. So it can't be your tank. Your tank just isn't bulky enough to handle both at this high level stage, unless they have like dodge mechanics like Blade. Blade might be able to do that. Yeah, Abyss does a lot. You can see my Abyss does very, very pitiful damage, but she does so much work in like reducing the boss's damage with her attack debuff if it lands on that roll. And what round am I on here? So this is round 7. I'm almost on round 8. And like my damage, this boss has 86k HP. I'm almost halfway, and I only have like half of the rounds left. So it's very, very tight for this particular comp because my gears are so underwhelming, unupgraded. You do want to try to get rid of this rock on the bottom right here so that your suppression can have more maneuverability. So basically you equalize both two sides. I got the 4-cell range with Ballista there after preparing. And Fortune does a lot of work too as a backup healing. So it does the nuke, the AoE nuke, and then it does another single target nuke. Suppression gets the trait passive, and he also gets the counterattack here without having any like reaction from the anti-melee. So there you can see that. Big heal and cleanse from Angel there. Got 4 rounds left, or 5 including this one. It looks pretty tight. a consistent like 3 to 4k from Beryl every round. And she like just is constant. I don't have a heal, but like even if I had the heal, I probably wouldn't use it because I just constantly need her to be doing damage every round to be able to make the 3-star clear. Finally some big damage from Ballista as well when he actually gets a crit. I think I used a level 40 bow for him too. So him and Beryl, my main DPS units, only have level 40 weapons for this. So definitely, since we just got the new event and we got like 200k Radiant Powder, yeah, that gives you a lot of, you know, material to actually upgrade decent weapons compared to what I use here. Don't be like me and like try to like push this at such a low level and low gear. It's rough. Alright, 2 rounds left. Let me check the boss's HP for you. 12k left. I'd do 12k in 2 rounds when I'm only doing like 3k, 2k with my DPS. So this is where it becomes very important to bring urgent orders. Like these last 3 or 4 rounds, now that the stigmata stacks are like getting hard to manage, you know, you have 4 here on Abyss, and Angel can't heal everybody all the time, including herself. So urgent orders is necessary, especially like, let's say Ballista has some stacks on him. He doesn't have any in this case, but there's rounds where he does the big nuke, or the second big nuke, the Abyssal Gaze, and then it hits Ballista, and then he's really low, and he has stigmata stacks, but he acts first before Angel, so I have to use urgent orders to make sure I can heal the Ballista before he acts, or otherwise he just dies, and then I'm not able to clear. There's something to keep in mind when... That's why you don't see any more Flag of Convallaria after my first 2 or 3. I just don't have the energy for it because I need the urgent orders. I use urgent orders here at the end on my Beryl, so I can just make sure she gets to attack. Do some plays. Oh yeah, I think I use March Command so that I can attack and then move out of the way as well before the boss's turn. And there goes the battle. So, I hope you enjoyed watching that replay with me. Really appreciate you tuning in once again. I hope this was helpful. Please leave a like and a subscribe if you got value from this content. And I look forward to seeing you in the next guide for Weapon Trial number 2. Check it out later. Cheers. Bye everyone.